Wait, isn't everybody at war over atheism?
Atheism? No. We've learned to get rid of all the isms in our time. Yes, long ago we realized isms are great for those who are rational, but in the hands of irrational people, isms always lead to violence.
Welcome everyone, everybody, whatever you are, to a new episode of Tim's Bored and He Needs to Talk for a little bit and then make other people listen to it. If you've made it so far, you've probably come to this show from the You Mean BTC podcast that I do with Daniel Brown, Zach Vole every Thursday night at 9 p.m. Eastern. If you ever want to get any of the new shows from that or the current show, you can go to ymb.tc/live. That actually won't get you the old shows. That'll give you the most recent landing page. If we're doing a live show, then they should also take you to that. It's probably going to be a shorter episode. If you've listened to this before, normally I do like a half hour, 40 minutes. Mostly what I want to talk about this week has more to do with what I talked about when I started this podcast than what I have been doing recently. Whenever I started it, kind of the whole point of this was supposed to be, well, it was always a stupid name, but Tim's 2 cents was in reference to, okay, I'll take an idea, I'll take kind of a belief system or a way people think about things and try to figure out what in that is worth, like believing in what in that is worth is actually like applicable to your life and not just kind of this dogmatic thing where you kind of just need to follow along with whatever group you're part of and that's how things work. This week, I have a few positive things, but it's not that it's positive or negative. But I've been thinking about recently kind of more ideas and how people relate to ideas most of the time in their minds. And normally we want to look at whatever idea we have as being pure and it's completely voluntary that we continue in it. And we've very much researched it and we've looked at it and there's no kind of fault there. It's a pure faith, to use more of like a religious term, but it doesn't just have to be something regarding religion. It can be something regarding politics, your social status, your whatever it is. We take, see, this isn't a good sign right off the bat. This is why Zach has more Twitter followers than I do. But we take whatever we believe in. Okay, that's what I was saying. We take whatever we believe in as far as whether it's religion, politics, or if it's like a social change where it's not so much that we're involved in politics, but like you're either a socialist or an anarcho-capitalist, and you go, all of the world's problems would just be fixed if everybody thought like I did because I've come to this logically. Everyone else comes to their ideas because they were raised like that or because of these unfair incentives towards that idea. And I've definitely said things like that before. But something, it's not that I've realized this recently, but having a conversation with actually my dad over the weekend reminded me of this. He's some background. My family is very conservative Christian. Not, and I have to give them some credit where it's due. They aren't super judgmental about it most of the time, at least vocally. They could be in their heads. They could be hating everybody in their heads. But as far as openly, they're not the kind of conservative Christians where they see two men in public holding hands like that's just disgusting. It's terrible. Why are you out? They might say like, oh, it's something sinful or something like that, but they're not going to go harass somebody in public over whatever lifestyle choices they have. He was trying to get me to explain to him what because from a Christian point of view, the whole the Christians have a weird view of mental health because mental health also, because of their belief in the soul, mental health does kind of stray into the status of their soul. They would look at someone with like severe depression as having like not a corrupted soul, because I mean we all technically have corrupted souls under that belief system, but like they have an issue with their soul. It's not just that they have like chemicals that are unbalanced in their head or something like that. But he was asking about, and this isn't something you can really argue with, or you can, but that most people do agree that there's people who have depression, yes, but there's also a lot of people that take a diagnosis for depression, whether that's a seasonal depression or maybe they're not doing exactly what they wanted in life, they're not living up to their potential, and they're not living up to what they thought was their potential. They get diagnosed as depressed when it's mostly just because they're sedentary all the time, they eat the wrong food, they do whatever. But his kind of issue, and it's because social work is his like line of work. He's done a couple different jobs, but it mostly comes under the branch of social work. There's a lot of people in that who kind of cling to whatever diagnosis a doctor gives. This is also something that, I mean, I've never experienced. I've never been on a college campus as like a student. So I've never had to deal with like the day-to-day grind of being around those people, but there's always kind of view that colleges are full of a lot of people who are kind of milking a diagnosis of, oh, well, I'm disabled, I'm autistic, I'm whatever this is. And my dad's question was, it seems like these people are kind of like giving up. They take this diagnosis and they then define themselves completely as that. They define themselves completely as their illness. They define themselves completely as whatever it is about themselves that they think makes them different from society, like different from what they would call like a regular functioning adult, someone who has the privilege of being a regularly functioning adult or teenager or kid, whatever. He saw that as them kind of just burying their heads in the sand, and they get the diagnosis and they go, okay, well, I guess I'm depressed now. This is where I'm at. And they live inside of that. They live inside of the sympathy they can get. They live inside of like their friendships being mostly based around talking about that. They live around that. And he was like, well, how can you look at this logically and just like your entire life becomes this one thing? And they seem to, all the rest of their life revolves around it. And this is why, like, again, the parents, very religious, very conservatively traditional Christian religion. But again, they're not, they don't freak out with criticism. So I was like, well, the way you're talking about somebody who kind of obsesses over their mental condition, their mental diagnosis, and they live in that. Their kind of their whole worldview is centered around that, and they kind of just exist in that. They almost, the way he was asking it, it was almost like they give up agency of themselves and just go, well, I'm depressed, well, I'm autistic or something like that. And I was like, that's exactly what you do in Christianity, but because you're looking at it as more of a choice, and you kind of follow along with it because you want to and you believe it's the right thing. And he wasn't so hot on that description, but whenever I said, this is like the way he was asking me and the questions he was asking, kind of how can people really think that way, are the exact same way. That is the exact same wording, same phrases that I would hear from somebody who was like criticizing my parents and was like, how can they just live their life inside of Christianity and that's all they really care about, and their whole life is just based off of this lie that they tell themselves, and none of it makes sense, and it's all just based on just like, oh, this is going to make me happy. So I was like, everybody does that with something. Everybody finds this one thing that they're going to lie to themselves about and tell them that, no, this is kind of the end all be all, because we don't have any answers. We don't have any, at least in modern, like, first world society, we have very few like milestones in our lives that aren't completely automated and aren't completely this thing that you just do with every single other person. Like, oh yeah, you graduate college, you do it with 300 of the people in the room, maybe 1,000 of the people in the room. Same thing with high school. You get a job, but you might have had a job since you were 16 and you started out working in a get-go, but now you work at a business. But again, there's no you've made it. This is, you can take some pride in this right now and you don't have to stop. It never really stops. I don't know if that's the thing with the capitalist society, commercialism, whatever it is, but nothing ever really stops. The world kind of always just keeps on moving. You do something new. It's, oh, well, I got to do this thing new. So that is hard to get yourself motivated for, at least to me. That's one of the main reasons that I've worked for myself is because the rewards that I saw from going to college for 4 years and putting in some work at a job, you make 70 grand versus, and then they basically own you for that entire time. When you get a couple weeks of vacation, you might have to fly all over. Your commute is in 2 hours to the city. It didn't really. Now, I'm not saying I made the right decision, but those incentives did not seem worth it to me to go immediately into college and then immediately into the workforce like that, where instead I could live off of just working for myself. But I do think that we all do have to lie to ourselves about something. Well, regardless, if you want to achieve something, and I'm not saying that lying to yourself is good, because it's not. You can lie to yourselves about a lot of things and then you just become stagnant because you go, I mean, it could be Christianity. It could be, oh, I don't have to worry about this world because I'm building up treasures for heaven or the next when we're reincarnated, whatever it is. Or it could be, well, I'm going to fight for socialism. I don't really care about anything in my life. I just want to post about this online. It could be, oh, I have a deformity. I have autism, or I have depression. That's what I'm going to kind of center myself on, give myself an anchor to be able to look at the rest of the world. Because we have to figure out something that lets us not just go, what are we doing? I don't understand any of this. So you need to find something where you can ground yourself in, but then at the same time, and this is why I was saying it had something to do with the shows I used to do, you need to make almost an informed decision to lie to yourself about something, or else you'll kind of just be stuck just blowing around, going from one ideal to the next, which isn't bad if you're truly, if you're truly truthful to yourself enough. You could move around to different belief systems depending on what you're trying to accomplish. Then, if you're trying to help, if you want to feed people, you go to a full kind of, I'm going to be a pacifist, or I'm going to believe in some kind of Buddhism or something like that. You could kind of bounce around to those different ideas. I think most of us have a flexible enough mind to do that, but a lot of times one certain idea, because you start to feel, if you do jump around like that, you start to feel kind of fake and hollow, because most belief systems, most whatever groups do have a demand for totally giving yourself over to something and going, nothing else is right, nothing else is true. And that was a lot of the negatives that I would talk about in my older show, looking at different, whether it was socialism, capitalism, Ludditism, monarchism. There's the bad stuff always happens from where that belief system or group starts to impose on the individual a requirement that they give up their own personal incentives and work towards a collective incentive of the group. And if you want to do really anything in your life by yourself, you don't want to live inside of whatever the group is, it's better to kind of distance yourself from that part of it. Like, if you have to, if believing in Christianity or Islam or Judaism or Hinduism or Buddhism, if you think it makes yourself a better person, maybe you're more moral, it helps with your relationships, that's fine. But you also do have to remember that you're going to have certain biases because of the people around you, because of the kind of teachings you're taking in. And you have to remember that you can't just go with what you think of as your gut instinct inside of that group, because you have to make sure, if you're going to go with a gut instinct, it's better to go with what you can kind of personally come up with. And I get that even me talking about this is kind of stupid, because I've just talked about how everybody has some kind of a bias. But if you can make an informed decision about what you're going to believe and what you're going to lie to yourself, you can kind of mitigate the damage of whatever belief system you're kind of forcing yourself, whatever hole you're trying to force yourself through. If you can kind of distance yourself from that, if you can get to the point where, because this is with a lot of people, if they hold a belief, they hold a whatever it is, any kind of attack against that, or a question of if that really is the best thing in the world, a lot of people take that as an attack on themselves, and that will then cause you to waste a whole bunch of energy defending what you know is a personal belief inside your head. And you know that most people aren't going to have that, because it's like, just probability wise, most people aren't going to. But it'll drag you into where you spend a lot of your energy trying to proselytize other people, and you're kind of then missing out on whether it's furthering yourself in your life, maybe advancing yourself in that belief system, but you kind of waste the time getting angry and trying, because when someone criticizes it, you're not just angry at them, you're then angry at yourself for kind of partly believing it and having kind of your faith shooken in whatever it is that you've kind of given yourself over to. If you can get to the point where you believe certain things because they help your life, you think they're better for society, whatever it is, but you can distance yourself from the emotional kind of way that most of humans apply to those ideas, I think you're better off, and I think you're at least a little bit more honest, and then you're also more understanding of how other people get to their ideas. Not that understanding means anything. All this stuff about, well, I sympathize with what, it doesn't mean anything. It doesn't make you a better person, but it does let you get into people's heads a little bit more. It lets you kind of figure out where you're coming from, and then, I mean, besides just being a little bit less of a dick to people around you, if you want to be a dick, you can also figure out better ways of being a dick if you understand where they're coming from. That's the most fun thing to me about going over my parents, is being able to kind of make fun of religion, because I know the specific things that'll not, like, it'll get them a little bit angry, but they'll also have to be like, yeah, okay, Tim, whatever. Because you can pick it, you can figure out where, like, what is the reason for why they believe whatever it is. But a lot more helpful without, I mean, it's not helpful to be a dick to people, but a lot more helpful for, I think, getting past whatever issues you have, whatever problems you have with people around you, is figuring out that you, to some extent, are doing the exact same thing, where you're believing in something that you know is not entirely true, because if you don't, then you have to go, well, I don't really know why we're walking around and doing random business things and continuing to make faster computers and phones and whatever it is. Because, I mean, regardless of what you believe, how people were made, if you believe that we're all from 6,000 years ago and God created the earth in 7 days, or if you believe there's evolution, there's neither of those situations, or any other number of scenarios that could have happened as to why we're here now. None of those then make sense if you try to go, and yes, we're completely adapted to be able to use cell phones that have an archive of all of our knowledge since the last time that all the books got burned back in Jerusalem, was it? I forget. Someplace the Huns burned all the books or something like that. But, like, all of our information that we've ever compiled and that has ever existed on paper since then is now open to us. We can constantly have flashing lights. We can play another game. Like, in a matter of minutes, you can go from playing a game of Candy Crush, Angry Birds, to then just seeing the most, like, the most obscure porn that you could even think of, that you, like, it's this huge giant jump. And then whenever you get into porn, you can watch however many millions, billions of different videos there are, and there's just all of this, just like, you could, for the next years, like, I don't know how many years, but, like, whatever, YouTube has so much content in that you couldn't finish it. It's always growing by, like, hundreds of thousands of hours. You could just sit in front of a screen for the rest of your life and be completely content, probably, because that's what we do. We always work towards content and less energy and more comfort. So you could probably very, not sustainably, but you could be content just looking at new content for the rest of your life. But if you want to break out of just, breakout is too much of a, like, Tim Ferriss word, but if you want to do, like, actually, if you want to create something, if you want to become a producer instead of just a consumer, you kind of need to lie to yourself, even if it's just to make yourself think that you're good enough to put stuff out. Because it's so much easier to go, I could write, or I could make a podcast, or I could just go listen to somebody else do it, because who cares about me? So that's mostly what I want to talk about, is like trying to figure out a way to motivate yourself with doing the least amount of damage and from whatever you're using to motivate yourself. Because most of the time our society's kind of beaten out of a lot of us that you should be living for yourself and you should be trying to better yourself. There's a lot of stuff about, how dare you vote with your own interests, or how dare you vote only thinking about yourself. But if we want an actual democracy, you have to do that. But especially in our society, capitalism outside of corporatism is why, like, we get this because nobody wants to go out on a limb and start a business anymore. And so then the only people who do it, and this is also because of financial incentives put in place by governments to then get more money from corporations. But then corporations are the only people starting it because they have all the money in the world. They can take a hit. They can have so many failed businesses, versus if you're somebody, just a person by yourself or a partner, and you want to start a business, there's so much more things that could possibly go wrong there. There's just the incentive to do that is not around anymore. And the idea of building yourself is not really around anymore. And so like, it's hard to motivate yourself and then not kind of fall into, because there's all these self-help books. Everybody has a new diet thing or a 4-hour work week or something like that. But then people kind of just start following whoever's preaching that. It becomes this cult of personality thing. And they just go, like, you hear people talking about what Joe Rogan said. Well, Joe Rogan's an idiot on some things. You can't just listen to everything he says. And he, to his credit, does admit that. But it's like, most people don't just want to go, okay, well, I'm just going to be, and this is what I think is probably one of the best things you can do, is just have kind of irrational confidence in yourself. Now, with the caveat that you have to remember that your belief of having just irrational confidence in yourself is irrational. And so then if you're in a situation where by being confident, you're going to really ruin something or kill yourself or kill somebody else, you kind of lay off of that. But the rest of the time, whenever you're making stuff, whenever you're working, you just kind of got to tell yourself, if things are going to work out because I work hard, I'm dedicated, I do things right. And if you can get yourself to do that, if you can get yourself where instead of worshiping the guy playing football or wearing the jersey of another man is weird. Wearing the jersey of anybody's kind of weird. You have somebody else's name and you're like, woo, I'm a fan. Being a fan of something is nothing. Like, it's not something to be proud of. Like, I support RAR. So, okay, who cares? If you want something for yourself, you kind of just have to give in to confidence, and you have to kind of like let yourself die on that. Let your whatever anxiety or whatever it is, you have to pick something to die on. We don't get forever. Eventually you're going to have to die with one thought in your head. And if you can find a way to die on something that's going to be the most beneficial for you in life, then you don't need to. You, like I said, you can just watch stuff on YouTube for the rest of your life. But it's, I think, better for you if you do find something that you can die on, and mostly that'll probably be irrational confidence in yourself. Having just the idea that I'm going to make things work out because I have to make things work out because I'm confident and I'm good at things and whatever it is. So hopefully I'm trying to work on that. I've almost convinced myself that I'm confident. I don't know if it's a lie though. So I go back and forth on that, but let's see if I actually did write notes down. I guess just advice, because I'll steal that from doing YMB. Just keep doing things. Like I said, the irrational confidence might help with whenever you think you're doing bad, you say, fuck it, I'm going to keep doing it because I'm going to get good at this, or I am good at it. And then through like you just doing the same shit over and over again and being shitty at it, eventually you will get better, because unless practice does help, and you do have to get good at things, and no matter really what you have to do to get yourself to keep practicing, I would think, or I would say that that's a fine way to kill yourself, is just to keep telling yourself that you need to practice at something and you'll always get better, because eventually it's going to happen. And whether you watched YouTube videos all your life or you made stuff, you're still going to die. You're still going to get watched by people at your funeral. They're going to stand around and go, he was a great person. Because even if you weren't, they'll lie on that day. But if you want to look back and be like, oh, I made some stuff, then I think you have to let yourself die for yourself. I don't know if that makes sense, but I think I've explained enough in this episode. Anyway, thanks you guys for listening. I'll talk to you next week. Bye.